Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's book review time today and I'm going to be taking a look at the first book in the World of Linaria series by MacRae. This is Moroda. So I've now read 3 novels by MacRae plus a novella and I've really enjoyed immersing myself in her writing. Moroda is the first book in the World of Linaria series. It's very different to the Dragon Spirit series of the Iron Crown and the Shadow Gate, but there are some great similarities in terms of writing craft. But before I get into those, let's have some quick background on the book itself. So Moroda was actually published back in 2017. It's recently been re-released, however, with some extra content, some extra polish, and a swanky new cover. The audiobook for this has also been re-recorded, and at the time of filming it's almost ready for re-release, so it won't be too much longer before you can listen to the updated edition of this book. And book 2 and book 3 will also be re-released on audiobook at the same time, so you can continue with the series as well. Now, Moroda was picked for me to read by you, my viewers, in my recent You Choose My May TBR video, and I have to thank you for prompting me to get to this one sooner than I might otherwise have done so, because I really enjoyed it. From the title you might think this is a first person or at least single point of view story, but you would be wrong. The story focuses on a group of companions, and they are specifically companions rather than friends, and the point of view chapters are shared among those characters, so you get plenty of time to get to know each one of them. Although Moroda is the main character of this opening novel in the series, as the story focuses on her development above all others, the other characters are definitely not just there for the ride. They're well fleshed out and in many cases complex as well. There's a whole host of different types of people in this world, and they are well represented in our core group of characters. We have Italans and Aurelians and Varkane and Goldstones, and what I like about these is that we're not explicitly told what any of these terms mean when they're first introduced, but it's done in a way that you don't need all the detail right there, right then. The terms come up quite naturally, and in the context they appear, it's quite easy to grasp what, or at least roughly what, they relate to. Without giving away spoilers of characteristics any of our characters may or may not have, this is a world that has a race of shapeshifters who are tuned to a specific animal. There's also a race of winged people who have varying degrees of weather-based powers. And I like how we get to see all of these and more without it ever feeling that the core group of characters was specifically picked to have at least one of every different type of person in it. Also in this world we have dragons, because it wouldn't be an MacRae novel without them, and here they're huge and they're terrible, and there's no holding back on demonstrating the awesome power they possess. Indeed, a dragon attack serves as one of the key catalysts of the story here, and it's brutal and it's tense, and the fast pace of storytelling given over to it barely lets up until the end of the book. I really liked this early introduction to the world and how it shapes our story and opens up new avenues to our characters and brings them together with one common goal despite the animosity some of them have for some of the others. The revelations are nicely introduced as the story moves forward, so there's a real feeling of learning what's going on as the characters do, and it's an effective way of building the intrigue and the danger in this world without throwing it all at you early on. There are some twists and turns here that work really well, and in the truest sense of the term, they really do come out of the blue to strike when you're least expecting them. This allows the story to keep up a good pace with a shifting set of circumstances, and really kept me on my toes as I was reading it. This is one of those books that seems to have a little bit of everything in it. There's just so much to see in this world, but none of it feels overdone. None of it feels like it's there just for show. It's a well-crafted world, and then there's a well-crafted story set within it. I've read a bunch of books recently that have airships, and they do feature quite heavily here. Like everything else, they just seem to be a natural part of the world here. Everything fits in a believable way. And with the airships themselves, I like that we get to see a bit more of the inner workings of them. We get to see air-to-air combat. We get to see a great fleet of airships, including some warships that are big enough to hold smaller airships inside them. And I think it's a relatively small but interesting facet of the world we get here, and I very much enjoyed it for that. The last thing I'll say about the world building, and indeed the story overall, is about the magic. I feel like although the magic plays quite a big part in the overall story, and especially the resolution of the story, it does kind of feel quite understated here. The story is more about the characters and the journey they go on, although of course magic does play a part in that journey, especially for some of them. But I like the idea behind what we have here, and probably my only real criticism of the magic is the apparent speed at which it can be mastered. Some of what we get here did almost come out of nowhere, but it didn't feel out of place for the story, and it's definitely something that was necessary. Having enjoyed this first book, I'm definitely excited to see where the story takes us next, and the good news for me is there's 3 books currently available that are all roughly as chunky as this one, so there's plenty of story for me to look forward to. As I had such a good time with it, it's probably no surprise whatsoever to hear that I gave Moroda 5 stars out of 5. It's definitely one of the highlights that I've had this year. I'm glad that I eventually got to it, because it's been on my list for a long time, and it's one that I absolutely recommend to fans of fantasy, dragons, airships, sky pirates, magic, shapeshifters, and everything else that you might find in a varied and well-crafted fantasy world. So that takes us into my weighted ratings, of course, and we'll start off as usual with the enjoyment. And because I had such a good time with this one, I gave it 19 out of 20. I flew through it when I was able to get a good reading session in. The pages just turned really well because I was enjoying it so much. The world building, as I say, there's so many aspects of it and I feel like everything was well done. One thing I didn't mention is the physical world building, the actual geography of it. And I like that we got to see a lot of that as well. Spending a bit of time on an airship and travelling around the world definitely helps with that, because we see not only different places but such a wide variety of different places. For the world building score, I gave this one 18 out of 20. For the characters, I went with 17 out of 20. I really liked all of the individuals that we had here. I like how it was a group that worked together and they all had their different abilities and their different strengths that they lent, but also that it wasn't a group of friends, it was a group that were kind of thrown together and had to deal with, as I mentioned before, the animosity between certain members. But I like the development that they all went on. I did find some things were maybe a little bit too easy. I mentioned before about the magic and the speed of mastering it, and that's probably one of the only criticisms of the book overall that I did have. For the plot, I also gave 17 out of 20. I really liked the overall story here, but I also like how it expanded as we got further into the story. It was all done in a very natural way. Nothing seemed really out of left field. There was nothing thrown in to specifically give a big twist or to open up a new threat or anything along those lines. It was all well handled and very natural in that respect. For the writing style, I'm already well at home with L.L. MacRae's writing. I really enjoy it. The pages turn very quickly. There's a very crisp, clear writing style, and I gave it 9 out of 10. For the pacing, I've already said how it was very well paced. I like a fast-paced book. This wasn't too fast. It did slow down at various points, as you need to allow the reader time to breathe and to digest what's come before. I gave this one 4 out of 5. And for the discretionary, I've given 3 out of 5. I like this new updated cover. I like the map that we've got inside it. It all comes together very nicely in this physical volume. So that gives Moroda a total score on my weighted ratings of 87%, which is a fantastic score, especially for an opening book in the series. It sits at equal 16th in my Hall of Fame, and there's a name that you might recognise just above it in equal 14th. So there we go, those are my thoughts on Moroda by L.L. MacRae, book 1 of the World of Linaria. A very enjoyable read. I'm looking forward to getting into Pelham, which is book 2 in this series. As usual, let me know in the comments down below if you've read this one, what did you think of it? I'll hopefully see you in another video sometime soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books, bye for now.